stinks. It's loud.
Yeah.
I'd rather rake any day. Patrick, you and I could not be more different.
Come home and smell like that 2-cycle fuel.
Oh my God, I took that thing off and I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I love that smell. I run the chainsaw every once in a while just to have that smell on me.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Deputy Editor Matt Milham,
Hey.
Kylie Jacques, Design Editor,
Hello.
and producer Jeff Rose.
Hello.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast.
Slash podcast.
Trying to get some more drama here, right?
Yeah.
Do you know this is our 200th episode?
Amazing.
I did realize that.
Yeah.
I figured we should have some kind of celebration, so I'm hoping you guys plan something.
I'm wearing a party hat right now.
I think that's pretty notable.
Mm-hmm.
If any of you have any favorite memories from the last 200 podcasts, if you will send them along to us, at some point we might do some kind of compilation show. So I think that'd be kind of fun, and I would like to hear what you all like best.
Where Brian was eating a banana. That's probably my favorite moment.
I haven't seen that one.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Can you hear him munching?
I don't know if you could hear him, but
They were teasing him about it.
Justin
Yeah.
called him out right in the middle of it.
That's so Brian.
Yep.
Oh boy! So we had a discussion of gutter guards in episode 197, and this is always a popular topic, both for our magazine content and the podcast, and I presume on the website as well. So we asked for feedback from listeners who installed them, and we heard from several people. Among them was Rich, who writes, "Me and my wife live in a heavily wooded lot and get a wide variety of leaves falling every year. When we moved in 4 years ago, we got new gutters installed. We installed leaf-for-leaf gutter guards, and in 4 years have not had any problems. I blow them off with a leaf blower every year at the end of the fall before the first snowfall. Unless the leaves are constantly wet, the wind will blow the leaves off by itself, keeping the gutters clean. I've attached a link to the product, and they have 2 models. If you're installing new gutters or have existing gutters, you can retrofit them." And that is, we'll put a link on the podcast page. The company is Plygem, and they are leaf-for-leaf gutter guards. And I don't know what these look like. Did you guys happen to dive into this?
I just looked at a quick picture of them. I didn't
Are they
spend too much
special in
time.
any way?
They look like gutter guards.
Yeah.
No, they're not
They're
special.
mesh.
And,
Yeah,
I mean,
they're
it seems
mesh.
like there's thousands of these products. I have no idea how
What
many there actually are.
differentiates them
But yeah,
that much?
Yeah.
Either like why some are so
some definitely work
effective.
better than others.
Yeah.
Like I went to Consumer Reports, and there are definitely like
Yeah.
some that do not do anything really.
I think I told you guys in a previous life I used to do this for people right in my street. And those plastic ones that come in a roll, and you just kind of like friction fit them in there, that's completely worthless.
That's exactly what Consumer Reports said.
It's just a complete waste of time.
Yeah, they built a bunch of tiny little roofs, and they just left them out for a year with all these different gutter guards on them, and that stuff just filled up with debris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, like all the rain is just skipping off those. It's not even making it into the gutter. Even if there is a channel for the water to go, it can't get into the gutter.
Yeah.
It seems like it solves the problem.
Yeah.
And with most of these products, you also still have to clean your gutters on occasion, right? So do you have to take them? Those guards look like a pain in the butt to get off.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Right.
So here's another response we got. This is Jonathan in Maryland. He says, I did a significant amount of research before purchasing gutter guards. Years of clearing decaying leaf litter made my choice easy. The slop sprays you in the face and permanently stinks up your clothes.
I've never experienced that.
No.
You have to wash them, Jonathan.
Yeah, he needs better detergent.
He must have ginkgo trees in his yard. Those are stinky.
I went with the micro mesh. He says it was about $300 from the big box store for 100 feet. After 2 years, they are still pristine. They lived up to the hype, staying clear and keeping everything out of the gutters. There are 2 caveats. The first is proper installation. The guards need to follow this roof slope so debris slides or blows off. So we have a picture of these. Did you guys see these?
Yeah.
The only area where I have to clear is the valley with a splash guard. It takes a few seconds with a brush on a pole. Number 2, they tend to dam up. If it rains, then immediately freezes. It only happens a few times a year in Maryland. I would not recommend them for New England or similar climates. So what I liked about his is they were stainless steel. They had a very fine mesh, and they're kind of ribbed, undulating. So it would seem like stuff would be less likely to stick to it.
Yeah.
But they're
Micro-mesh.
screwed down, so like forget about it if you have to clean under them. It seems like a big pain.
They have to be professionally installed?
No, he did this.
Oh, right.
Do you remember Jonathan came to visit us with his family?
Oh, is that him?
Yeah, he's
oh,
written
that's
a number
fun.
of times. So thanks for the feedback, Jonathan, once again.
Yeah, I've got ones that go on with little clips.
On your house?
Yeah.
And what do you think?
They're fine. They definitely keep out the bulk of the stuff, but they were installed by the previous homeowner, I think, and there are small sections. They're
Like
probably
4 feet?
Maybe 4 feet or so each. And so there end up being gaps between them because they also don't fit in these gutters perfectly.
Right.
I don't think they're exactly sized for these gutters in particular, but
so
they do a decent job.
Do they have the mesh that looks like expanded metal lath?
I think so.
Yeah. That's the kind
and
of...
that's really, there's a lot that just look like, that's all they did was they went to the store, bought a bunch of metal lath, cut them into strips, bend it on a brake.
and stick them in your gutter.
Yep.
We're going to talk about it in a little bit, but this is a question that's near and dear to your heart, right?
Well, yeah, all this gutter talk got me going. I was like, I need to clean my
go up
gutters.
there.
So that's, well, it's funny. I do the one on the short side, and I don't mind it because it's not very long and doesn't, I don't mind it. But I was fantasizing about, I keep putting my ladder to the back side of my house, just trying to get up that ladder and do it. And I get scared and I can't do it. I can only get to a certain rung and then I get scared. So what I realized is that I just need a tool where I can, a long pole like this guy was just mentioning, where I can push the debris, but I'm still going to have to grab it at some point.
I think you got to see in there.
Yeah.
Gotta see in there.
So you're going to have to put your cell phone on the end of your pole and do a little video.
I can't, I don't think I'm ever going to get over that feeling of, I don't think it's safe.
Immersion therapy. Just do it. A little bit every day.
That's what I tried. I kept
one
going.
rung higher.
I had the ladder set up for a little bit, and I was like, I'll just do one more rung, one more. But I got to a certain one, and I was like, because it's on my deck too, so I'm even up higher than ground level. So.
Yeah, but a deck is nice and flat, and you could even screw a cleat to it to prevent the ladder from kicking out.
Yeah.
I just feel like if I fall and I'm by myself and my neck is broken, that's not a good situation.
Well, you go up with your cell phone.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
And so when you're stuck halfway up the ladder, you can call someone to go.
So it bugs me that I've got one cleared out gutter and one that's not. So.
Well, you're better than most of America.
Yeah. Do what I can.
So I have an intense fear of heights that I have conquered. When I was a new carpenter especially, I just did not like ladders or scaffolding or going on roofs. And honestly, I just think it's something you get over.
It's the silent killer. The ladder.
No, it's not. It's the yelling killer. It's, Have you have any fear of heights?
I don't have a fear of heights. I have a fear of
falling,
impacting with the
That's
ground.
what everyone says.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was afraid because I used to work on apple ladders a lot, but those feel sturdier to me. You know what I'm talking about? They're like a tripod.
Yeah.
And I get up on the 16-foot ladder, and that was not an issue for me.
Yeah, and you're not even holding on. You're reaching up to harvest apples.
Yep.
So at least when you go up an extension ladder, and you can hold on almost all the time with one hand.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
I wouldn't worry about it. Gutter cleaning is cheap. I bet you could probably have someone do that for $100 or $200.
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah. Getting somebody to the house to do it, though. That's always the issue.
We had a conversation in episode 195 about can lights. It was that, I forget who it was, gentleman who was going to insulate his kitchen ceiling, right? And he had already put in can lights, and we all said, what are you doing? So we heard
Take them all out.
We heard from Doug from Colorado. He says, about can lights, I understand why the Air Sealing podcast would be against them. I think that's another product we might want to look into. Just
doing another podcast called The Air Sealing
Podcast. Totally.
I am not going to be on that one.
All air sealing all the time. I agree there are problems, even though I have about 30 in my house. The use of surface mount LED fixtures works unless you want to dim them. Over 80% of my lights are on dimmers. I spent my career designing lights for stage productions, and I want the same control at home. I know there are dimmable LEDs, but most of them are crap. Cree makes one with decent dimming curve, but the color temp doesn't change as it dims. Thus, the dim light is cold and ugly. The Philips Warm Glow looks better, but only dims to about 20%. Until these problems are solved, I feel the LED is an imperfect solution. Why do you need to dim more than 20%? Can you tell
and he
me?
says dims to about
Turn
20%, which is practically dark.
Nothing. I'm like, turn off the lights.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it either.
Product-wise, I reached out to David Warfel, who's a lighting designer we've worked on a few stories with. And he says he often steers away from them surface mounts because they're not truly recessed, but that and that there's more glare with those. But that if he does use them, he uses a product from DMF, and he recommended another, which is about $100, and another called WAC or WAC, which you can get on Amazon.
And do those have a nice color range?
Yeah, he wouldn't recommend them otherwise, I'm sure, just because that's really important to him too.
Yeah, I mean, I get what this guy is getting at, because if it stays that same color temperature of these lights when it's dim, I mean, that's hideous.
Yeah, I think David uses them in utility closets mostly.
Yeah. There are other options, though, I think, out there. I mean, there's technology for everything right now, right?
Right.
I mean, you can change to the colors of all kinds of LEDs using your smartphone. There's got to be some other thing out there besides what this guy's looking at.
I never thought about dimming lights so much as having worked on these stories with David.
So, in a period of my life, all my lights were on dimmers. But the older you get, the more you realize, like, no, I need all the light.
The light I can get.
I need more light. Can we put on some more lights?
Yeah. Just walk around the house with a headlamp in the middle of the day.
Honest to God. I like got my phone out and I'm like looking at the newspaper trying to read it. So
that's a good point. Which leads to a story that we just did from KMB, lighting for the long term, about aging in place and all the lighting you need in the kitchen.
So tell me, how many lumens do you need when you're in your late
1,000.
40s? Really?
Which is 2 suns.
2 suns.
I'm going to be ready when we move to Mercury. Yeah. It's going to be bright and awesome.
Yep.
So I know what he's talking about. So like normal incandescent lights, when you dim them, they turn nice and warm. They get more yellow. And I presume what he's saying is that these LEDs, when you dim them, they don't have that quality.
Warm, right.
But the problem is like that warm quality is not right either. It's not, I mean.
Depends on the time of day. You want warm at night.
It's hard to see stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like it's like candlelight.
It's very much like candlelight.
I put my warm lighting and the candle next to me to read in the evening.
Yeah.
So I've got lots of warm light.
That's why you got to wear glasses.
And I do wear
Been ruining your eyes.
glasses.
That's why she comes in all exhausted.
Yeah.
She thinks it's nighttime.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So let's dive right into your gutter cleaning, unless you feel like
I feel like pretty much
you
said
adequately covered it.
Not much to say there.
Have you seen
But
these?
I will say that all of the talk around is what inspired me to do it.
Well, it's the time of year, right?
Yeah,
It's
that's
now.
right.
People are starting to think about this. Have you seen the things that you can hose attachments or leaf blower attachments that you can, like a snorkel that you can use from the ground?
Yeah.
Any interest in trying that?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I am kind of interested in that. Do you have one? Can I borrow it?
We'll see what it can do.
Okay.
I just got a new backpack leaf blower as part of a barter deal, so
cool.
I can't wait to try that out.
Nice.
Those are fun.
200 CFM. No,
What brand?
200 miles per hour. It's a John Deere.
Nice.
Yeah, and it weighs like 100 pounds.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's super
Get your
cool,
hearing
though.
protection out.
So this thing is old, and I somewhat, with some concern, agreed to do some drywall repair for a friend in exchange for this machine. And I was like, man, this thing hasn't been run in what looks like 10 years. There's no way it's going to start up. So I put this pre-mixed 2-cycle fuel in it. It didn't have any gas in the tank, which seemed like a good omen. And I put this in, it started on the second pull.
Wow.
Nice.
That's impressive.
Never happens.
Not from season to season, never mind years.
Yeah, I was like super psyched about that.
Well, especially if, you don't know what kind of gas the guy had been running in
Right.
it. And if it had ethanol in it, then it would have rotted out everything.
Destroyed.
Yeah.
Don't use that stuff, folks.
I hope I never have to strap a leaf blower to my back again. I spent many years having to do that on a daily basis.
So you don't like it?
Oh, God, no.
What's not to like?
Stinks. It's loud.
Yeah.
I'd rather rake any day. Patrick, you and I could not be more different.
Come home and smell like that 2-cycle fuel.
Oh my God, I took that thing off and I was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I love that smell. I run the chainsaw every once in a while just to have that smell on me.
There's a difference between men and women.
So I think if you could like bottle that as a cologne, it would be a gold mine.
Oh man, hipsters would be all over that.
Dude, that's our $1 million idea. We just have to buy some of that 2-stroke oil and just put it in a little bottle. Man.
Freaks.
So what? How's your gazebo coming?
I'd rather not talk about it. No, it's going fine. There are some difficulties. I don't know. I mean, it's just slow going because I've got to scribe all of these.
You have
sort
to
of
fit every part by custom.
Yeah, because everything is angled funkily. So it's just tedious work.
So is it enjoyable or would you do differently?
If I wanted to do it quickly, I would definitely do it differently.
Yeah?
But I mean, it's satisfying. It's fun to, get all this stuff fitting correctly. Mm-hmm. It just takes a long time. So, I'm not getting it done.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
No pressure, man.
Yeah.
So
no, that's the thing. It's not my own property. It's not like I'm getting paid to do this. So.
And have you bought the shingles yet, the cedar shingles?
I bought a bunch. I bought, 6 bundles, I think. So
how much?
$37 a pop.
Oh, that seems affordable. I would have guessed a lot more.
Yeah. But I got them at a box store.
Okay.
But they look all right.
Are they hand splits or are they sawn?
They're sawn.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's going to look fantastic when it's done.
It is.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll see.
I have another milestone to talk about. I finished the nightstands, which is at least the end of the current planned pieces of furniture that I have to make for our bedroom set. There's going to be some cabinets and shelving and storage above them, but I think I have some photos of that, Jeff. Yes, we do.
Aha. Doesn't feel good, does it?
I put him in this morning, so he must have got ahead of me. You know what I did? I didn't save them to the server. They're on my laptop. We'll put them in the podcast page.
That's too bad. I wanted to see them. I guess I can look later.
I see them here. I'm looking at them.
Are you?
are?
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think?
They look
they're
nice.
free. They hang from the wall.
Okay,
And they have a little 8-inch drawer. Very simple. Shaker knob.
Did you stand on them?
I didn't, but I did sit on them just to see.
Cool.
Totally didn't move.
Nice.
That's got to feel good. You have a whole new bedroom going on.
Oh, man, it's so awesome to have a place to put my eyeglasses at night. I can't tell you how fantastic that is.
Yeah.
Instead of reaching around the floor and hoping I don't step on them. Should we get to some questions?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from Neil in Wisconsin. Hello, guys and Kylie. I'm a religious listener since day one, and the podcast is a great way for me to learn as a self-proclaimed better-than-average DIY carpenter. I come from a long line of carpenters, so it's in my blood. You've been very helpful so far. I've run into a roadblock. I'm designing and planning a 4-season cabin in northwest Wisconsin, which is Zone 7. I'll be the owner-builder in an area that is about 120 miles from the Twin Cities, so I'm looking to do a lot of the work myself. I guess that's because it's probably hard to find a contractor. My plan is to contract out the framing, roof, and concrete work. I'm looking to use big house warm form slab forms for the foundation, which is going to be a frost-protected monolithic slab. It needs to follow the unheated building codes because we won't be keeping it at 62 degrees plus in the winter when we're not using the cabin. Can you briefly explain that, Matt?
Yeah, so there's sort of like 2 paths for this. If your building is heated, then normally with this kind of thing, you would have like wings of insulation that go out sort of from the bottom of your, I guess, thickened edge of this slab, or there's all different kinds of ways to build this thing.
And it depends on how cold it is,
Depends
right?
on how cold it is, yeah, the air freezing index and sort of like the mean average temperature. And then if you're doing a regular heated building, then you would sort of like leave soil in the middle, and the insulation would go down, and then your concrete would go on top of that. If you're doing an unheated building, then you basically have to excavate out that mound in the middle, and the insulation, as far as I understand, basically goes continuously, like from the wings all the way underneath, and then you have to basically backfill on top of the insulation on the inside, and then you end up putting your slab on top of that.
And the reason is because there's an assumption that if you're heating the building, some of that heat is going to keep the ground warm and prevent frost heaves. Is that my understanding correct?
Yeah, sort of the model of the heat flow. Yeah, you're getting heat from the building is helping keep the soil warm so you don't get frost heave.
And conversely, if you're not heating the building, that heat is not available, so you have to do a better job of insulating the slab foundation from the air temperature.
Right, because at that point, basically all the heat that you're getting is coming from the ground.
Okay, so just to clear that up here.
Yep.
Okay, so this, what's his name here? Neil has been looking into a double stud wall assembly with zip sheathing on the exterior and either industrial pole barn steel siding on the exterior or LP Smart side. I like the idea of being able to frame the walls with 2x4 lumber to save expense and provide significant insulation in the walls, reducing my ongoing energy costs. We'll use a wood stove when we're using the cabin, but we'll heating with mini splits and a few electric baseboard heaters as backup when temperatures go below the capability of the splits. My question is this. I've been trying to find out why I cannot use fiberglass bat insulation in a double stud wall. If the wall is essentially a 2x4 on the inside, a 5.5-inch space, and a 2x4 on the outside, with sheathing on the interior with membrane on the interior prior to drywall and zip on the outside, why can't I use fiberglass bats? Again, this is mostly DIY, and I highly doubt I can find an installer for dense pack cellulose in this area. I've searched GBA and Fine Homebuilding and cannot really find a reason why this can't be done. The bats between the 2x4s would be vertical. The bats in the 5.5-inch airspace would be horizontal. What am I missing? Does it have to do with the exterior zip staying too cold and the fiberglass doesn't allow moisture to dry to the inside? I don't know. Thanks for considering my question, and I appreciate any help or suggestions. You're all fantastic. Kylie is, anyway.
I don't know where he's getting that you can't do that.
I don't know why either.
Didn't somebody else write in something similar about, where it was about squishing the bats too much?
Well, I don't think he has to worry about squishing the bats in this case.
Because they're all going for the designed cavity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think he's totally fine doing this.
I am too. I think the risk is, and the reason people favor cellulose for this application is that you need to really stop air movement, or this very deep cavity is going to lead to a moisture accumulation on the sheathing on the interior side in the wintertime, right? Because that interior moisture is going to go in there. It's going to condense on the back of the thing. And the thick wall prevents it from drying. It doesn't get warm enough to dry out. So the risk is air leaks creating this problem. So if you do a good job air sealing on the interior, I can't see why that wouldn't work.
Same.
You agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, if you have any gaps in your insulation, you're going to get some sort of like convective movement. But if that's not a problem if the air from the inside isn't getting in there anyway.
And you can't use things like, people in cabins, for whatever reason, want to use 1x6 tongue and groove paneling, right? Pine paneling. That's the go-to look. And you can't do that. You need to have a good air barrier. It needs to be drywall. It needs to be taped. And it needs to have some thought to stop these air leaks that are going to rot the wall assembly otherwise.
But you can put your pine over just
After
glue
the drywall.
it to the drywall.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you could use a plywood air barrier and then put the pine over, assuming you tape the seams and do a good job sealing around electrical outlets and other penetrations.
Yep.
I wonder why you got the idea that he couldn't do it.
Like I said, I think people discourage it because if you do dense pack cellulose, blown to the density, there's no way air is going to get. It just can't move through the massive cellulose insulation that's in there.
Yeah.
Just don't use 3 layers of craft face bats.
Because then it won't dry?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I would say just use unfaced bats for the outside wall, exterior wall, in between, and then use craft face on the inside.
I like unfaced bats all the time, but
Yeah.
I think there's probably applications where it makes sense in mixed climates, maybe.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I would say the unfaced or the face bats for the inside, just because I don't know if you're going to be able to get them to stay where you want them without that.
That's a good point.
Can you tell me the difference between the two?
So craft face bats or faced insulation, it is sometimes described, have a integral vapor retarder. It's a paper facing with asphalt on the insulation side, and it stops. What's the thermal or water transfer? I'm trying to think of, Matt. Vapor diffusion. And I should have studied more for this podcast.
And the main reason I say don't use the craft face in between, in my attic, this is, again, the previous homeowner, I think they wanted to up the R value in the attic, and they had put down a bunch of craft face bats on top of the existing craft face bats. And I went up there, and there was water all over the place. And I think it was just vapor collecting on the craft facing on that second layer.
Didn't you tell me that you had an imperfect ceiling air barrier? Your drywall had gaps and stuff owing to crown molding or some other detail?
Yeah, they had put bed molding up at that intersection, and none of those seams were taped
That's
at
a
all
problem.
in the entire house.
That's not helping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had these stains all over my ceiling. I didn't know where they were coming from, and I'm pretty sure I've tracked that down now.
Yeah, I bet. So have you taped those corners yet?
Oh yeah, that was one of the first things we did when we bought the house. I tore because I was taking that molding out, and that's when I realized I took it out in one spot because there was a problem there. Obviously, there had been a lot of air leaking out, and the drywall itself had kind of gotten a little bit moldy,
Sure,
and damaged. And I was like, all right, well, I got to take this out. Took it out, saw that the seam wasn't taped, and I was like, all right, I guess I got to take all of it out, and nothing was taped.
man.
Yep.
So it's coincidental. My first house had the same issue. It had this like bad cove molding put up with like drywall screws. They didn't even use like finished nails. It was just absolutely horrible. Same deal. Pull that down, and there's no tape behind it. I don't know why. I guess it's because people are resistant to do inside corners who are not proficient at drywall finishing because it is hard, right? And they're just like, wow, I'll just put this bed molding up or a crown molding, and I don't have to worry about it. But it's not really true.
Yeah.
At least foam the gap if you're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, this house was also built in the 50s, back when everybody probably thought
Didn't
houses
care.
need to breathe.
Yeah. Okay. So what I want to talk a couple about other things here. For one, that worm forward slab form insulation that this Keith has described, Neil, excuse me, is an awesome product. So that solves the problem of your frost protected shallow foundation. It has insulation in an L shape that allows it to insulate the edge of the slab. I've never seen anything like this outside of EcoCore's raft slab detail, but this seems like a great solution to that hard to insulate area in a frost protected shallow foundation.
Yeah, and I didn't look real deep into this product, but looking at the pictures, I'm not sure that the insulation goes underneath the perimeter of the foundation itself.
It doesn't.
Or not.
Well, I mean, part of it does, but then you use conventional flat insulation for the rest of it. This is just for the corners, the vertical edge of the slab.
Okay.
Cool product. Didn't know anything about it. There's photos and links on our podcast page for those of you who are interested. I would tell you to consider it if you're doing a frost-protected shallow foundation. The other thing Neil mentioned, is keeping his mini splits set to 50 degrees, which I learned not too long ago you can't do oftentimes. They just simply don't go that low. They're meant to be used in inhabited spaces, and some of them only go to 60 degrees. The Fujitsu you can trick into going to 50, but you have to navigate this special menu. So if you're thinking about using mini splits to keep your seasonal house or vacation home at 50 degrees, you might want to think of another plan because it's not going to work. They simply just will not do it. Some of them will do it if you have an external thermostat, but it's not a given. So don't assume you can do that.
50 degrees seems kind of low in terms of...
Yeah, but if you have an unoccupied building, it doesn't matter. You just needed to keep the pipes from freezing.
Well, that's what, yeah, I guess 50 degrees would do that.
For the Fujitsu cold climate mini splits, you can access what they describe as the minimum heat mode in the smart set operating mode on the thermostat. Just like, why can't you turn it down to 50 degrees if it can go to 50 degrees? Why does it have to be in a separate menu? And
you got to crack the code to get there.
That's ridiculous, right?
That does seem strange.
Who makes this stuff?
Nerds
Get me
like
started.
you.
No, it's not nerds like me. Nerds like me are like, just make it one setting. Don't get me started. Okay, so Ted from Southeast Michigan writes, "Hi, gang. I recently did some volunteer interior demolition on a pretty old house, which is being gutted for a remodel. According to the site leader, it had asbestos siding, which we did not touch, and on the inside it was old enough that the studs were 2x4 rough sawn lumber. The house had been in disuse for some time and had some water damage here and there at some point, although it seemed dry at the time we did the work. The wall cavities were filled with some kind of black loose-fill insulation. It was uniformly black in all areas, so I'm pretty sure it wasn't due to mold. Our work primarily involved tearing down drywall and interior trim and so forth, removing the insulation and getting it all out into the dumpster. We were provided pretty decent disposable dust masks, but the air quality was very poor due to the small windows and lack of breeze or mechanical ventilation. We were told in advance that it would be a demo project, so I brought along my Eclipse respirator and quickly switched to that. It did a great job, and I experienced no coughing or scary booger colors. But but I've been wondering what kinds of things I may have been exposed to. Are organizations relying on volunteer labor subject to any of the OSHA regulations that professional contractors are when it comes to lead abatement and so on? This organization does mostly remodels, so this may come up again. What steps could they be taking to reduce hazards for the volunteers? Love the podcast. Keep up the good work. Well, this is a sticky wicket, I gotta say.
I love that expression.
Are
they? They don't apply, right?
They don't apply.
I think well, I mean, for Habitat it does, doesn't it?
No. So volunteers, no. For staff members, probably.
Because, I mean, I was looking on Habitat's website, and they said they did have an exemption from 1995 to 2011, but because of basically, and not just them, but apparently residential construction in general, because of deaths and injuries, that was rescinded in 2011.
I did not know that.
And now they are subject to OSHA.
Wow,
Good.
really? Even
Yeah.
with volunteers?
I don't know if it's with volunteers. This is just the information that they're providing on their website. So
I bet you it does not apply to the volunteers.
I think they have a moral obligation to protect their volunteers,
Definitely.
right? I mean, that's
yeah.
what you have to do.
At the very least, provide some training and, disclose information up front as to any hazards. And I mean, did all they know was that it was a demolition project? Did they not know that they might be encountering asbestos?
Sure.
I mean,
So
you
let's
gotta be
talk
up
about
front.
that. What are the things that they're at risk of exposure to in a situation like this? Certainly lead, certainly asbestos. Particulates generally are
Right.
not good to be breathing, right?
Yeah. Mold, mouse poop.
Hantavirus, and
Yeah.
I talk about that a lot, but it's actually a real concern.
Yeah.
I don't know what
especially-
that is. What is that?
So it's a disease you get from mouse poop, and it gives you these respiratory infections that are pretty tough to kick, and it's common, and it's a real problem with unoccupied houses because mice and other critters
Sure.
take up residence and have a field day.
Yeah. Raccoon poop.
Yeah, all
So
this stuff.
when you were working for Habitat, did they provide you with PPE?
Yeah, so we provided our volunteers with disposable dust masks. It's tough to provide people with real respirators because you need to do a fit test. Ideally, as you know, Matt, like you need to determine what kind of exposures in order to know what kind of respirator you're supposed to provide people.
Right.
So it's kind of glossed over, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, it's glossed over pretty much industry wide, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you're supposed to be testing the air sort of like, you probably almost need to do it continuously because you need to know exactly what's in the air to have the right protection.
Right.
Where your other option is basically just using supplied air all the time.
Right. And that's going to be prohibitively expensive for a nonprofit especially. I can tell you that when we were having volunteers demo the houses that I worked on, there might be 2 dozen, 3 dozen people working on a single house, all using like claw hammers to take out plaster. And there would be clouds of dust pouring out of these structures. And I'm sure it was not good for anybody.
Yeah.
So did you get something respirator beyond what you were provided?
No.
You just went with a little dust mask?
Yeah, and I would say that folks were not as savvy about that kind of stuff, in the early 90s as they are now, myself especially. And when you're in the throes of a volunteer experience, frankly, it seems like as a construction supervisor, there are more immediate things to worry about, people getting hurt other ways than lung disease that could take years or decades to show up.
Seems like it's on the onus is on the volunteer to find out what the project will entail and what they might want to protect themselves with.
I would suggest to people to bring your own good respirator and make sure it fits.
Which he did, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool that he knew to
We
do
should
that.
talk about this respirator briefly, but I had never seen one of these. But what I really like about it is the cartridges that purify the air that you're breathing are way closer to the mouthpiece. Most respirators and all the ones I've seen and used have these like bug-like appendages stuck on them, right? And it gets in your way, and it's just annoying and it's heavy. But this seems like a much better trimmer design. I would totally try that out.
The nice thing about the other ones, though, is it's generally easier to find the cartridges at box stores
Absolutely.
or anywhere else.
Absolutely. You're going to find those just about anywhere. These, I don't know where you get.
Yeah.
You know, I was fitted for a respirator when I was applying fungicides back in the day, and it wasn't a form fit. And the difference between, you know, and then I got that corrected. But yeah, it really matters that it fits right.
Yeah, it really does.
Because I could smell. I mean, I felt sick after the fact. It wasn't doing anything. You know,
Yeah.
I might as well not have had it on. So
Right. Well, and you have to have the right cartridge.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you can fit anything other than, you know, sort of just particulate filters onto this Eclipse.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
There's once again, we'll put a link up on the podcast.
is it Eclipse or Ellipse? I think it's Ellipse.
He wrote Ellipse. Is it Ellipse?
Yeah, I'm
it is
looking at the
Ellipse on
front.
there.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I think I said Eclipse.
Just so people want to look it up.
Yeah.
Ellipse, my bad. What else do we say about this?
Get scuba gear.
It's like, I don't know. I mean, wear a good respirator, and Habitat or whoever you're working for should be providing hard hats and other safety gear, safety glasses. We always had that stuff, and gloves for our volunteers.
But they should also probably be open to having a dialogue around any concerns a volunteer might have. I'm sure they do, or are rather, but you know, he's asking what they can do to make their volunteers safer. And
Right.
I think acknowledging that they are in a situation that might cause injury.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of it.
Do you go through ladder safety and how to use harnesses and all that stuff?
I would hope
in
so.
Yeah.
Habitat?
Yeah. And ideally, like if there was any high work, I would pair more experienced volunteers who I knew with lesser experienced folks so they didn't try anything crazy. And one thing I would say, and I think any former Habitat for Humanity construction supervisor would corroborate, is like you cannot assume any knowledge at all.
Right.
You just like absolutely have to assume that people are going to try and kill themselves over and over again throughout the day.
So is training a big part of it?
Yeah, but it's limited, right? You're talking about you have reasonably new volunteers every week. Occasionally, we would have week-long work groups, either from high schools or colleges, especially during spring break. And you would have a week to train them to do a particular task or a number of tasks, whatever. But oftentimes, they were different people every week, and you would have to get them up to speed and have them do good work. It was fun, but challenging, I got to say.
I bet.
So the thing that we were dealing with, you guys may remember around that time, was the RRP rules, right? Protecting the landscape and people from lead exposure when doing remodeling work. And we were trying to navigate that. And there was some discussion about creating negative air environments for doing this kind of work, but it is just too expensive oftentimes.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle.
Work in an old age home or something.
What's that?
Do something else.
Do something else.
Find some other kind of volunteer work.
I would say trying to get on the new construction projects. They're way cleaner. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rehabs were really gross. This is Chris from Charlotte, North Carolina. Hi, FHB podcast crew. I was wondering if I don't have a home that was designed to be a modern green home from the start, how feasible is it to stop using air conditioning during the summer? We moved from Charlotte, North Carolina from Duluth, Minnesota 3 years ago, and while I love not having to shovel snow, the heat here can be pretty intense sometimes. Our house, like many others in Minnesota, didn't have air conditioning, and we would just open all the windows. Here in Charlotte, I miss the feeling of fresh air inside, the sound of nature throughout the day, and just having one less mechanical system to rely on. We have a builder standard 1990s ranch that I'm sure wasn't designed with any kind of passive cooling in mind. I'm sure they fully intended you to just crank up the AC to be comfortable most of the year. Would living without AC most of the time be feasible here? Is there anything I could do to make the most effective use of our ceiling fans and window openings? Would a whole house fan stand a chance against our 100-degree days down here? Thanks for your help. Not for me, it wouldn't.
No. I mean, a whole house fan works well if you're in a place where it gets nice and cool at night and
is dry.
and is dry,
Yeah.
and you have a house that is able to keep. Basically, you have insulation and windows that are able to prevent the house from heating up too much during the day.
Do you want to describe that scenario, how that would work in a house with a whole house fan in the right climate?
Yeah, so you would just open up your windows at night. Hopefully, you have screens so you're not letting a bunch of bugs in,
Right.
and then you just crank that fan on, and it basically sucks all nice, clean air in from outside and blows it up through the attic. And theoretically cools your house, and it does work if you're in the right environment.
What's the problem in Charlotte, North Carolina?
It never
Humidity.
gets cool enough. You're just going to be
always
sucking
humid.
in
Yeah.
humid air, and it's just going to be sticky and gross all the time. And then your AC, if you turn it on during the day, is basically just going to be battling back that, moist air that you dragged in all night.
What about a Mr. Cool mini split?
Sure.
Something that Justin recommended on a video that he did.
Well, so mini splits are great, but if he doesn't want to use air conditioning, it's still air conditioning.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. What do you
But
think
it's
about
more
this?
energy efficient, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have the static losses from ductwork that conventional split systems have. So you seem to be the more hot-blooded type here in the office. What do you think about the feasibility of living in?
Well, I live without. Yeah, I mean, I deal with it.
But we live in New England.
Well, it gets pretty humid and sticky here. I think of Connecticut as something like Vietnam. This is the muggiest place I've ever lived.
So folks who are listening are going to be like, right?
Yeah.
It's like, come to Georgia or South Carolina
Yeah.
or even North Carolina.
I'm cold-blooded. I like it cold. But I live without air conditioning.
What do you think, Jeff?
I don't think you can do it. Not in the Carolinas.
And you're going to ruin your house, right?
Yeah.
It's going to get moldy and gross.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I'm here to say.
And I mean, if you have carpeting, forget about it because it's going to be like the haven for dust mites and mold.
Yeah.
You guys are just looking at me like I don't know if you agree or you think I'm crazy.
no.
Well, if you get rid of the air conditioning, you got to do the dehumidifier.
Yeah,
right?
that's really what
and
you
that's
need is-
another system running anyway. So
I would say
And
if
that
you
only works if it's closed up.
right,
Yep.
you can't dehumidify the outdoors.
Right.
Yeah.
and you're not getting those nature sounds.
Yeah.
Buy one of those smart speakers and just tell it to play crickets. When you
Yeah.
feel like you need it, and traffic noise, right?
Are those mini splits quieter though? I've
Some of them
never.
some of them are real quiet.
Yeah.
Like you basically don't even hear it.
So the thing is with mini splits, and I don't think many folks who aren't familiar with them get, is that they need to run all the time.
Okay.
They run at very slow speed, and it's meant to just barely make enough cooling to keep the house dehumidified and comfortable. As a conventional split system that's not variable speed or two-stage, like it's got on and off, and it's making cold air until the thermostat is satisfied, and then it shuts off. And the problem with that is, especially in places where you have a lot of humidity and it's not blazingly hot, is it doesn't do as good a job dehumidifying as a mini split, which is more effective at removing moisture from the air. I wouldn't want to live in Charlotte, North Carolina without air conditioning, I can say.
No, I think even if you had a passive house, you might still need some sort of conditioning. You just would run it less often.
Yeah. And I think, if you want to save on your energy bill, that of course you do. The same things that would apply in Minnesota apply in North Carolina. Get a blower door test, seal up as many of the air leaks as possible. And you'll be able to have the thermostat higher and still dehumidify, and the house is going to be more comfortable.
Yeah. Low-E glass.
Low-E glass. Would you tell someone to replace their windows?
Possibly, depending on what kind of windows they had. I mean, if you have just single pane windows with no low-E coatings and you've got a lot of southern exposure or western exposure, I would say, yeah, possibly, at least on those windows.
How about a film?
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that.
It kind of reminds me of like a 70s custom van.
Yeah. Well, are you talking about films that go right on the glass? Like
Yeah.
a low-E film that you just
Yeah.
sort of like press on yourself? Like a Lee press-on nail for windows? Doll it up.
So I think I don't know if people are still doing it, but like in the 80s and stuff, people were putting these films on their windows to reduce cooling load,
Yeah.
especially on southern and western exposures.
Yeah. I guess if it'll save you money and it'll make you more comfortable, then I would say go ahead and do it.
These are probably academic discussions. What you really need to do is hire someone with a blower door to do an energy audit. My guess is that you probably have attic ductwork, which is a building science disaster. So you're going to want to seal that up, and a minimum, ideally, you'd pull it all out of there.
Yeah.
Put it somewhere inside the building.
Well, you could do exterior window shades too. You
Yep.
really don't want the sun. Once the sun gets through the glass, you're pretty much screwed at that point. So interior blinds don't really help. But if you can get some sort of exterior shading for those,
Or awnings, right?
Yeah, awnings, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, or
Why
some
did
kind of
awnings
weird
ever
shutter or
disappear?
whatever.
They seem like a great idea. I mean, they're hideous, but
I think that's why.
Yeah.
Would you put them on your house?
No, but I would do what you're talking about, the exterior shade of some kind.
Yeah.
We probably have some articles on what that looks like, because it has to be at the right height above the window, and it depends on where you live, right, where you put them. So
Yeah.
I'll see if I can dig something like that up for the
That's a good
podcast
suggestion.
page.
You skipped over your pole barn question, I think.
I know, because I'm saving it for last.
Yeah.
That was question 2, wasn't it?
Yep.
Troy from Michigan writes, I'm looking to build a freestanding woodworking shop on my property. Hoping it can explain the pros and cons of building a pole building versus a slab foundation besides the cost. Building will be insulated, heated with a cement floor. Overall size of the plan is 24 by 32. I'd like to keep in as much heat as possible, as it gets rather chilly in the mitten for several months in the winter. That might be the best expression ever.
I had the same reaction.
Is that like an Irish
have
saying?
you heard that
Chile in
before?
the
I'd
mitten.
never heard that before. I thought it was a Michigan thing.
Say
Yeah,
that
probably.
again.
No.
Chilly in the mitten.
I like the Irish brogue.
I really enjoy your podcast and value your opinion. Well, opinions are what you pay for them.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
You've got experience with this, though, right?
Oh my God, do I? This is my ground insulated under my post form / pole barn workshop and artist studio. So I think pole buildings are great. The big problem with them is that people put the wood posts that support the horizontal members called girts right in the ground.
Yeah.
And if you're building an ag building and it's going to hold some sheep or horses or whatever, that's probably fine. Farmers are like equipped to replace a pole or two when they start to rot out. But if you're going to have a wood shop in there and presumably full of machinery and stuff on the walls, like, you're not going to be able to replace a pole easily. So what I did was dig holes with my friend actually dug them, Andy, and dug trenches and put in spread base footings, sonotubes, filled them with concrete, put an anchor bolt in the top, a 6x6 post base, put 6x6 posts up to the eaves. So that solves the problem of the rotting posts in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that detail came from Richard Berg, who was the designer of the building I bought at barnes.com. There are hundreds.
I didn't realize that was a kit. Your
Ye-
barn is a kit.
It wasn't a kit, but I bought a set of stock plans.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yep. And I think they were $300. And you can see in this photo that I poured the piers first, and then we finished the slab, which has 2 inches of XPS under it and a grid of number 4 rebar on a 2 by 2 foot spacing.
And why'd you go with that rather than just doing a more conventional thing, even just like a frost-protected shallow foundation?
So there's a good reason that I didn't do stem walls or a frost-protected shallow foundation. And stem walls, which are short walls below frost depth with a conventional spread footing, I didn't do because it uses so much more concrete.
Mm-hmm.
I think my pour for my piers, and I'm going off recollection here, but it was like 6 or 7 yards versus 14 or 15 for stem walls. So you're talking about a huge savings at $100 a yard, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do a frost-protected shallow foundation because of the stock plans did not show that. So that eliminated that for me, although I was tempted. I will say both frost-protected shallow foundations and, well, they need a relatively flat lot, right? You can't have a lot of slope, or you have to bring in material or cut and fill to make it relatively level. It has to be relatively level.
Right.
That looks pretty level.
So I had to bring in a couple dozen yards of material to level this, and it is pretty flat. So, like, even if it's a little out of level, it takes a surprising amount of material to plumb it up, flatten it out.
Yeah.
Frost protection shallow foundation is how I would go if I wasn't using stock plans and I had a relatively flat lot.
Yeah.
It's just a great foundation system. And if you remember to the first question we talked about it has, what was the name of that product that has the insulation?
Warm.
Warm form.
Yeah.
Warm form insulation is going to make a frost protected shallow foundation easier. And I'll put a link on the podcast page for a shallow frost protected foundation article we did a few years ago. I think Andy did it for his outbuilding.
I think so, yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah, I would probably do the frost protected shallow foundation and just stick build, because this is, and I don't know what you did, like how you insulated yours, but it seems like a lot of times people end up building sort of stud walls inside of the post frame in order to put insulation in. And so you're stick building then anyway.
Right.
So it's sort of like you're not doing one or the other, you're doing one and the other.
I totally agree with you. I think that is a very valid point. One plus to the post frame method of construction is if it is an unconditioned space, it is a super cheap way to get an enclosed building, right? Yeah. The girts, the horizontal members that go perpendicular to the posts, are also really convenient ladders to access every single part of the building while you're building it. So for an owner builder like myself, it's very convenient. Like if you're a contractor, it doesn't protect you from the OSHA rules of having to be tied off if you're 6 feet up, off the ground. That you still need to do all those things, but it makes it pretty easy to get around the building, even when it's like mine, 2 stories tall. But as you suggest, it is harder to insulate. So in my case, I put the horizontal girts, and between them, I put 1.5 inches of reclaimed polyiso insulation, and then on the inside I put another 1.5 inches on that covered the girts, so that was spanned from post to post continuously with polyiso.
How long did it take you to build that, Patrick?
Forever.
Yeah,
it was two plus years.
Huge project. Looks
it was
super
fun, though.
solid. Yeah.
It was fun.
Had you ever worked off existing plans like that before?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'd never built a pole building, though. I got to say, it's pretty user-friendly for an owner-builder working largely by themselves.
Yeah.
The only time I had help was Andy's excavation work. I did everything else myself with some help from friends to do the roof framing and floor framing. Just it makes it so much easier. Although I did a lot of that myself, too.
And you have really great blower door scores on that. But I would think that these buildings would be a little harder to air seal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I just spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours air sealing, both after the insulation was all in and as I went along. Like, each layer is individually air sealed. I have 3 layers of cut and cobble insulation in the rafters. I wouldn't recommend most people do that, but I had the insulation left over, and rather than try and sell it or give it away or get rid of it, I just decided to put it up on the roof, and it's performed pretty well.
How do you heat that?
So I have a wood stove, and we have electric resistance heating. I don't heat it, generally speaking, in the wintertime. There's no water out there, so there's little risk of stuff freezing, but like your tools will start to rust and whatever. But it's heats up quite comfortably within an hour with the wood stove running. So I start the wood stove, go in the house, and have breakfast on the weekends, and by the time I'm out there again, it's ready to go.
Yeah.
Sounds nice.
I do have enough power to, the plan was to put a mini split in, but I just haven't pried open my checkbook enough to do that. And on the subject, when we were talking about this gentleman's vacation home 120 miles from the Twin Cities in Minnesota, when you're building this place, Martin Holliday pointed this out to me. Think about how often you're going to be using it when you're making decisions about how to heat it, cool it, and build it generally. Like, you could go completely off the deep end for a building you're going to use surprisingly little. Like,
it's like a boat.
It's
you
like
buy
a
a
boat.
boat and you think you're going to use this thing all the time, and you take it out the first time and it costs you $500 in gas, and you're like, all right, next summer, see you again.
And then all you do is spend time working on it, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, seasonal camps and cabins have always been kind of primitive, right? And you fire up the wood stove. Yeah, it's freezing when you get there, but within an hour or two, it's quite comfortable. And you got very little money invested in it. So, like, take that money that you didn't spend on building the place and, like, buy fuel or buy a wood stove or buy cordwood or buy a snow machine, like whatever it is. I think you can really overdo a seasonal or, like my shop, a partially used structure. My original question that brought this to mind was I asked on Greening Building Advisor what these folks would do with regard to a heating plant. Do I put in a conventional gas furnace with ductwork? Do I put in what people describe as a unit heater, which is the kind of thing that hangs from the ceiling and is usually gas-fired or oil-fired and makes a bunch of hot air and heats up the space? Or do you use a wood stove or mini splits? And Martin's like, Patrick, how often are you really going to be using this place? You're completely overthinking this.
And yet you spent how many hours of your life air sealing it?
I could justify that because it's super cheap, right? You're talking about a case of spray foam to the tune of $120 versus like thousands of dollars in heating equipment that I could have spent, right? Instead, I can buy tons of electricity to run the electric resistance heaters whenever I want. Like, I'm never going to spend thousands of dollars that I would have spent on, a gas furnace and ductwork. So,
Yeah.
oh boy, I forget what our final thing was.
Your closing note?
The closing
Yeah.
note.
The Home NZ, the award-winning
NetZero house.
Oh,
in
yeah,
Zero
Phoenix.
yeah.
house.
Oh, my God. This is the perfect example of bad public policy. If you're considering building a home, a NetZero house in Phoenix, Arizona, the city will be happy to provide you with a full set of plans at no cost. The offer is part of the city's 2050 idea to make all buildings net energy positive. This was posted on at Architectural Record. It follows a design competition in 2017 challenging architects to develop plans for a near net zero house suited to the city's hot, dry climate. The winner was Marlene Emirzian. Am I saying that right? Emirzian?
so.
Mirzian? I don't know.
She developed plans for a 2,185 square foot, 3-bedroom home that is near net zero. It has a HERS score of 30, making it 70% more energy efficient than the average built-to-code home. It's estimated the house could be built for $344,000. If you can't build a net zero house in Phoenix, Arizona for under $344,000, I think there's some serious problem.
Phoenix is a big market. I mean, it's an expensive city, isn't it?
I know, but the energy costs are stupidly low. You don't have heating costs, you have cooling costs, and the
Right.
energy is cheap. So she designed, and I'm sure it's a fine house, a house with SIPS walls 9.5 inches thick and roof panels that are 11.25 inches thick. So SIPS, why?
What's the risk down there? Is there any risk to SIPs?
It's just
in
a
hot,
really
dry
expensive
climate right
way
there?
to build a house.
Yeah.
I don't know. For a climate that doesn't require it. It's heating and cooling with a carrier air source heat pump. So this is a conventional ducted system. I don't know. There's nothing special about this house.
Well,
I'm
maybe
kind of
that's
annoyed.
the nice thing.
What?
That it's so
not
sort of
inexpensive,
conventional.
though.
Well, I mean, it's not inexpensive, but I mean, for that market, that's probably not that much money.
It's more than the median.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
More than the median for Phoenix.
yes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't-
So, I mean, you're getting a better house for a little more money than the median.
Fair enough. I would just say there's plenty better ways to build a net zero house in Phoenix, Arizona. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah.
ever, it's like sunny all the time. A photovoltaic array is going to generate tons of power.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I'm not arguing that you can't just build
A normal house.
regular ranch house
And put a PV
with
array on the roof.
on the south facing. Yeah, and just go that way.
So one of the appeals of this house is that it can be oriented anyway, so it's not lot dependent or whatever. So it's going to achieve its near net zero status no matter what the building lot is like and
What if you
it's
don't have
exposed
good solar gain? Although I suppose it's Phoenix. Who doesn't have good solar gain?
That's my point.
Yeah. Probably not a lot of wooded lots in Phoenix.
I'm tempted to try and build this thing. You guys up for it?
You moving to Phoenix?
No, not.
You're not going to build it here.
No, and it's like, I think SIPs are a solution in search of a problem, frankly.
Oh, I'm not a fan, really. No.
Like, how do you hang your curtains?
That's something I can imagine you being that concerned with.
Seriously, you're going to hang your curtains to like 1/2 inch OSB? No.
Why not?
I have heavy curtains. Am I being unfair? What do you think about this house?
I don't know. I was wondering why you put it in here because I didn't think it seemed all that special compared to some of the other projects that we look
Right?
at. So I wasn't sure why you put it in here, but now I understand you just wanted to pick it apart.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I roll. I
wonder if it could be scaled down. It's kind of a sizable house.
2,400 square feet, right?
It seems 2,100, 2,200.
I just don't understand the like inches of foam insulation to build walls that are only marginally better than something that uses.
I'm going to call Marlene. I'm going to ask her.
She's going to hate me. Don't let her know that I was critical. I gotta not answer the phone or the door. You guys have anything to add?
Nope.
All right. Well, that does it. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Matt, Kylie, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. So I was going to briefly toss out an incentive to folks who send us a good question that we read on the air. I'm going to send you a FHB podcast sticker.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Awesome,
Why
right?
did it take us so long to think of that?
So
We have stacks of them on our desks.
they are very rare. Actually, they are very cool. Rodney Diaz, our
they are.
creative director, designed the logo, and it is some of the best-looking graphic artistry I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I don't say that just because it's our podcast.
No, they're
it's
really
good
clever
looking.
They're pretty
stickers.
sharp, yeah.
So,
I'm tempted to put one on my car, but I don't want anybody to hear me.
They won't know it's you
That's true.
unless they watch it on YouTube.
so write in, get your question read, get a sticker. So, thanks to all of you for listening, and happy building.
If it ain't Fine Homebuilding, get back in the truck.